Get your hands off my employee, now. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Belinda Harris looked up from where she was kneeling on the floor, her arms wrapped protectively around the 6-year-old girl who was rocking back and forth, hands pressed over her ears, tears streaming down her face. The store manager, Mr. Patterson, had her by the shoulder, trying to pull her away. "You're done here," he was saying, his face red with fury. "Security is already on their way. You touched a customer's child without permission." "She was having a meltdown," Belinda said, her voice breaking. "She needed help. You overstepped. Massively. I don't care what you thought you were doing." The child screamed, a raw, desperate sound that made everyone in the luxury department store freeze. Everyone except Belinda. She pulled the little girl closer, creating a barrier with her body, blocking out the bright overhead lights, the crowd of staring people, the chaos that had triggered this moment. "It's okay, sweetheart," Belinda whispered. "I've got you. You're safe. Just breathe with me. In and out. In and out." "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the child," a security guard said, approaching with his hand on his radio. "Don't you dare touch her," Belinda said, her voice fierce now. "She's autistic. She's overstimulated. If you grab her right now, you'll make it worse." I said step away. "Get your hands off my employee now." The security guard froze. Mr. Patterson's face went white. And Belinda looked up to see a man in a $1,000 suit standing 10 feet away, his expression a mixture of shock, fury, and something that looked like recognition. Julius King, the CEO of King Industries. One of the most powerful men in Chicago. The man whose face was on the cover of Fortune magazine last month. He was staring at the little girl in Belinda's arms. The little girl who was starting to calm down, her breathing slowing, her hands unclenching. The little girl who looked exactly like him. "That's my daughter," Julius said, his voice shaking. "And you just tried to fire the only person in this entire store who knew how to help her." The silence that followed was deafening. Belinda's arms were still wrapped around Amira King, and Julius King was walking toward them both. What he said next would change Belinda's life forever. "You just watched a woman about to lose her job for doing the right thing. But you don't know how she got here? You don't know why she recognized what no one else in that store could see? And you don't know what Julius King is about to do that will expose just how broken the system really is. If you need to understand how one moment of compassion can unravel into a choice between keeping your job or keeping your humanity, if you want to see what happens when the person everyone dismissed turns out to be exactly who was needed, then stay with me. Because this story is about to show you that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is care when everyone else tells you not to. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to want to remember this. Now let me take you back to the beginning. To the moment Belinda Harris walked into Sinclair and Monroe department store for her first day of work. Belinda Harris needed this job. Not wanted, needed. At 28 years old, she'd already worked a dozen different retail positions across Chicago. Sales associate at Macy's, cashier at Target, stockroom manager at Nordstrom. Each job lasted 6 months to a year before something happened. Budget cuts, store closures, personality conflicts with managers who didn't like that she asked too many questions or cared too much about customers. "You're too involved," her last manager had told her during her exit interview. "Retail is about transactions, not relationships. You need to learn boundaries." But Belinda had never been good at boundaries when it came to people who needed help. Maybe it was because of her brother. Danny was 12 now, living with their mom in a group home on the South Side. He was autistic, nonverbal, and the kindest soul Belinda had ever known. He communicated through pictures, through music, through the way he'd gently touch your hand when he wanted you to understand something. Growing up with Danny had taught Belinda to see what other people missed, to notice when someone was overstimulated before they melted down. To understand that behavior is communication. To know that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is create space and silence instead of demanding words. It had also taught her that the world wasn't built for people like Danny. Too loud, too bright, too fast, too unforgiving. Sinclair and Monroe was the kind of department store that catered to Chicago's wealthiest residents. 5 floors of designer clothing, luxury goods, personal shopping services, and price tags that made Belinda's stomach turn. She'd applied on a whim, not expecting to hear back. but they'd called her within a week. "We're looking for someone with experience in high-end retail," the hiring manager had said. "Someone polished, professional, someone who understands discretion and service." Belinda had interviewed in her best outfit, a black dress she'd bought at a thrift store and tailored herself. She'd smiled at all the right moments, said all the right things, and somehow, miraculously, gotten the job. The pay was better than anywhere she'd worked before. Not great, but enough to help her mom with Danny's care and maybe, finally, start saving for her own place. She started on a Tuesday morning in October. Mr. Patterson, the floor manager, was in his 50s, balding, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Rule number 1, he'd said during her orientation. "The customer is always right." Rule number 2, "Don't touch the merchandise unless a customer asks you to." Rule number 3, "Stay in your section. Don't wander. Don't chat with other employees. Don't overstep." Belinda had nodded, taking mental notes. Her section was women's designer wear on the 3rd floor. Valentino, Versace, Dolce, and Gabbana, dresses that cost more than her monthly rent. She learned quickly how to approach customers without being pushy, how to read body language, who wanted help, who wanted to be left alone, how to fold tissue paper around purchases with the perfect crispness that said luxury. For 3 weeks, everything went smoothly. She was good at her job. Customers complimented her. Her sales numbers were strong. Mr. Patterson had even nodded approvingly at her during last week's team meeting. Belinda had started to think, maybe, finally, this job would stick. And then, Wednesday happened. It was just after 2 p.m. The store was moderately busy, lunch hour rush winding down, afternoon shoppers starting to trickle in. Belinda was refolding a display of silk scarves when she heard it. A sound that made her entire body go still. A child's scream. Not a tantrum scream. Not an "I want candy" scream. A distress scream. The kind Danny used to make before they figured out his triggers. Belinda's head snapped up. Across the floor, near the shoe section, a little girl was standing in the middle of the aisle, maybe 6 years old. Beautiful dark skin, hair in 2 neat puffs, wearing a pink dress and white sneakers. She had her hands pressed over her ears. Her eyes squeezed shut and she was screaming. People were staring. A woman nearby, expensive handbag, annoyed expression, was trying to steer her own child away from the disruption. A security guard was approaching, hand on his radio, and the little girl was alone. No parent in sight. Belinda's training kicked in before her brain could stop her. She set down the scarves and walked quickly toward the child. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly, kneeling down a few feet away, close enough to help, far enough not to crowd. "Can you hear me?" The little girl didn't respond. Her screaming had turned to a high-pitched keening sound. Belinda scanned the area. The overhead lights were bright, too bright. The store music was playing too loud, and there were too many people, too many sounds, too much happening all at once. Sensory overload. "Okay," Belinda whispered. "Okay, I understand." She pulled off her cardigan, the one she wore over her uniform, and held it up, creating a small barrier between the girl and the crowd. "I'm going to make a quiet space," Belinda said gently. "Just for you. Is that okay?" The little girl's eyes opened. They were brown, wide, frightened, and she nodded, just barely. Belinda shifted, using her body and the cardigan to block out some of the visual chaos. She lowered her voice even more. "You're safe," she said. "I know it's too much right now, too loud, too bright, but I'm here, and we're going to make it better." The little girl's breathing started to slow. "Do you want me to count with you?" Belinda asked. "Sometimes counting helps. 1, 2, 3, the girl whispered. 4. Belinda's heart squeezed. "That's right. 4, 5, 6. They counted together, slowly, all the way to 20. By the time they finished, the little girl was calmer, still trembling, but no longer screaming. "What's your name?" Belinda asked softly. "Amira," the girl whispered. "That's a beautiful name. I'm Belinda. Amira, where's your grown-up?" Amira's eyes filled with tears again. "I don't know. There were too many people. I got scared, and then everything was too loud and I couldn't. "It's okay," Belinda said quickly. "You didn't do anything wrong. Your brain just needed a break. That happens sometimes. My brother Danny is the same way." Amira looked at her with something like hope. Really? Really? And we're going to find your grown-up, okay? But first, do you need a quiet minute? Amira nodded. So Belinda sat with her, right there on the floor of Sinclair and Monroe, blocking out the world, creating a small pocket of calm in the chaos. She didn't see Mr. Patterson approaching. She didn't see the security guard calling for backup. She didn't see the other customers recording on their phones. All she saw was a little girl who needed help, and that's when everything fell apart. What exactly do you think you're doing? Mr. Patterson's voice was sharp, angry. Belinda looked up, her arms still around Amira's shoulders. I'm helping. You're touching a customer's child without permission, Mr. Patterson interrupted. Do you have any idea how inappropriate that is? How much liability you just created for this store? She was having a meltdown, Belinda said, trying to keep her voice calm even as her heart started racing. She was alone and scared and that's not your responsibility, Mr. Patterson snapped. Your responsibility is to sell clothes, not play therapist with random children. She's autistic, Belinda said quietly. She was overstimulated. You were overstepping. Massively. Mr. Patterson's face was red now. You don't diagnose children. You don't touch them. You alert security and move on. Amira's hand tightened on Belinda's sleeve. Please, Belinda said. Just let me help her find her parent. Security will handle it. You're coming with me. Now. He grabbed Belinda's shoulder, trying to pull her to her feet. Amira screamed. The sound was piercing, desperate, and it made everyone within 30 feet freeze. Stop, Belinda said, pulling away from Mr. Patterson. You're scaring her. I'm scaring her? Mr. Patterson's voice rose. You're the one who put your hands on someone else's child. Do you understand what could happen? What her parents could accuse you of? This store? I was helping. You were out of line, Mr. Patterson was shouting now. Security! Get this woman away from that child immediately. 2 security guards approached. Belinda felt Amira's arms wrap around her neck, clinging desperately. Please, Amira whispered, don't leave me, please. Belinda's throat tightened. She looked at the little girl's terrified face and made a choice. I'm not leaving, she said softly. Ma'am, I need you to step away from the child, one of the security guards said, his tone firm but not unkind. She's scared, Belinda said. If you pull me away right now, it'll traumatize her. That's not your call to make, Mr. Patterson said coldly. You're fired. Effective immediately. Security, escort her out. The words hit Belinda like a physical blow. Fired. She needed this job. She needed the money for Danny, for her mom, for rent. But when she looked at Amira's face, at the trust in those brown eyes, she couldn't leave. Just let me help her find her parent first, Belinda pleaded. Then I'll go. I promise. Just don't. Get your hands off my employee now. The voice cut through the chaos like thunder. Everyone froze. Belinda looked up. And there, striding through the crowd of onlookers with an expression of barely controlled fury, was Julius King. She recognized him immediately. Everyone in Chicago knew Julius King, billionaire tech CEO, founder of King Industries, one of the youngest self-made billionaires in the country. He was 33, tall, with dark skin, close-cropped hair, and the kind of presence that made people instinctively step aside. He was also staring directly at Amira. That's my daughter, Julius said, his voice shaking with emotion. And you just tried to fire the only person in this entire store who knew how to help her. Mr. Patterson's face went from red to white in seconds. The security guard stepped back, and Julius King walked straight to where Belinda was kneeling with Amira in her arms. He dropped to his knees in front of them. Amira, he said softly, his voice completely different now, gentle, full of love. Baby, are you okay? Amira looked at her father, and her face crumpled. Daddy, she whispered. It was too loud, and I got lost, and everyone was looking at me and I couldn't. I know, sweetheart, I know. Julius reached out slowly, giving her time to process. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have let you out of my sight. Amira launched herself from Belinda's arms into her father's. Julius held her tightly, his eyes closed, his whole body trembling with relief. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Julius opened his eyes and looked at Belinda. Thank you, he said, his voice rough. Thank you for seeing her, for understanding. for not treating her like she was broken. Belinda's eyes filled with tears. She's not broken. She's perfect. She just needed someone to make the world a little quieter for a minute. Julius stared at her like she'd just said something profound. Then he stood up, Amira still in his arms, and turned to Mr. Patterson. "You fired her," Julius said. It wasn't a question. Mr. Patterson was sweating now. "Mr. King, we have policies. She touched your daughter without permission, and I thought—" "You thought wrong," Julius said coldly. "This woman just did what everyone else in this store failed to do. She helped my daughter. She recognized that Amira was in distress, and instead of ignoring her or calling security like she was a problem to be removed, she created a safe space. She used skills and compassion that apparently your entire staff lacks." Mr. Patterson opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Sir, I was just following protocol." "Your protocol is garbage," Julius said flatly, "and you just lost your best employee." He turned back to Belinda. "Do you have another job lined up?" Belinda blinked, still trying to process what was happening. "I know. I need to. I have bills, and my brother needs—" "You're hired," Julius said. Belinda stared at him. "What? You're hired? King Industries? Sensitivity training and inclusion consulting? You'll work with our HR department to develop programs for neurodiverse children and families. Starting salary, $120,000. Benefits, stock options, the works." Belinda's knees almost gave out. $120,000. That was more than double what she'd been making. I don't have a degree in that," she managed. "I don't have formal training." "You have something better," Julius said. "You have lived experience. You have empathy. You have the ability to see people instead of problems. That's worth more than any degree." He shifted Amira in his arms. "My daughter deserves to grow up in a world that understands her, that accommodates her, that doesn't treat her sensory needs like inconveniences. I've been trying to build that world through my company, but I've been missing something. Someone who actually gets it." He looked at Belinda. "I think that's you. Here's what breaks my heart about this moment." Belinda was fired for doing the right thing, for seeing a child in distress and choosing compassion over policy, for refusing to treat a little girl's disability like a problem to be managed instead of a person to be helped, and that happens every single day. People lose jobs, lose opportunities, lose everything, because they chose kindness in a system that punishes it. Maybe you've been there. Maybe you've been told you care too much, that you're too involved, that you need to learn boundaries and stop making things personal. But what if caring too much is exactly what the world needs? What if the people who refuse to look away, who refuse to follow protocols that hurt people, who refuse to treat compassion like a liability, what if those are the ones who change everything? If this story is reminding you that your kindness isn't weakness, that your empathy isn't naivety, then subscribe. Because maybe the world needs fewer people who follow the rules and more people who do what's right. Belinda stood there in the middle of Sinclair and Monroe, her mind reeling, trying to process what had just happened. Julius King, billionaire, CEO, one of the most powerful men in Chicago, had just offered her a job, on the spot, in front of everyone. "I don't understand," she whispered. Julius smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to almost gentle. "Let me explain," he said. "Can we sit somewhere quieter? Amira needs a break from all this stimulation, and I think you probably need a minute too." Belinda nodded, still dazed. Julius turned to Mr. Patterson, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "We'll be using your office," Julius said. "It wasn't a request." Of course, Mr. King. Whatever you need." They walked through the store, Julius carrying Amira, Belinda following while every employee and customer stared. Mr. Patterson's office was small but private. Julius settled into a chair, Amira curled in his lap, her face buried in his shoulder. Belinda sat across from them, her hands trembling. "I've been looking for someone like you for 2 years," Julius said quietly. "Someone who understands what it's like to navigate a world that wasn't built for neurodivergent people. Someone who doesn't just tolerate differences but celebrates them." He stroked Amira's hair gently. "Amira was diagnosed with autism when she was 3. Her mother and I divorced a year later. Not because of Amira, because her mother couldn't accept that our daughter's brain works differently. She wanted to fix her, put her through intensive therapies that traumatized her, treated her like she was defective. Julius's jaw tightened. I got full custody, and I've spent the last 2 years trying to build a life for Amira where she doesn't have to pretend to be someone she's not, where her needs aren't treated like inconveniences, where people see her as fully human. He looked at Belinda. But I can't do that alone. I can make my company accessible. I can fund research and programs. I can use my platform. But I can't teach people to see what you saw today, to recognize distress instead of misbehavior, to choose connection over convenience. Belinda's throat was tight. My brother Danny is autistic, nonverbal. He's 12 now. Growing up with him taught me everything that matters. Julius nodded slowly. That's what I thought. The way you approached Amira, giving her space, lowering your voice, creating a sensory shield, that's not something you learn in a training manual. That's lived experience. But I don't have credentials, Belinda said. I barely finished community college. I've just worked retail my whole life. You have the most important credential, Julius said. You have empathy, and you have the courage to act on it, even when it costs you. He shifted Amira, who was starting to fall asleep against his chest. King Industries has 5,000 employees across 4 cities. We're one of the most successful tech companies in the country, but we're failing when it comes to inclusion, real inclusion. Not diversity statements on our website, not token hires, but actual accessibility for neurodivergent employees and their families. He met Belinda's eyes. I want to change that, and I think you're the person who can help me do it. Belinda felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Why? She whispered. Why me? Because you didn't hesitate, Julius said simply. When everyone else saw a problem, you saw a person. When everyone else wanted to call security, you sat on the floor and counted to 20. When you knew you were about to lose your job, you stayed anyway because leaving would have hurt her. He smiled. That's not something I can train. That's who you are. You know what this moment teaches us? Sometimes the most qualified person isn't the one with the most degrees or the most impressive resume. Sometimes it's the person who's lived through something hard and came out the other side still believing in kindness. Belinda didn't have credentials. She had a brother. She had experience. She had a heart that refused to look away when someone needed help. And that was enough. Maybe you've been told you're not qualified, that you don't have the right education or the right background or the right connections, that your lived experience doesn't count as real expertise. But what if it does? What if the struggles you've survived, the people you've loved, the compassion you've held on to despite everything, what if that makes you exactly who the world needs? Subscribe if you believe that sometimes the best qualification is simply refusing to stop caring. Belinda left Sinclair and Monroe that day with a business card in her hand and a job offer that felt like a dream. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about what Julius had said. You're the person who can help me build this. For the first time in her life, someone was telling her that her compassion wasn't a liability, it was an asset. Over the next week, Belinda met with Julius and his HR team. They outlined the position, inclusion specialist, focusing on neurodiversity in the workplace. She'd help develop training programs, create resources for employees with autistic family members, consult on making King Industries offices and events more sensory-friendly. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. It was everything she'd never let herself dream of. I don't know if I can do this, she told Julius during one of their planning meetings. Why not? He asked. Because I'm not. I've never been the person who leads things. I've always been the person in the background, the one who helps quietly and then goes home. Julius leaned forward. Belinda, the world needs quiet helpers, but it also needs people willing to step forward and say, this matters. This is worth fighting for. You did that when you sat with Amira. You put yourself at risk, your job, your livelihood, because you believed she mattered more than protocol. He smiled. That's leadership, real leadership, not the kind that demands attention, the kind that sees what needs to be done and does it anyway. Belinda felt something shift inside her. Maybe he was right. Maybe she could do this. The job started in November. Belinda walked into King Industries headquarters, a gleaming glass building in downtown Chicago, wearing a new blazer she'd bought with her first paycheck. She was terrified. But Julius met her in the lobby with Amira, who ran up and hugged her legs. "Belinda," Amira said, beaming. "Daddy said you're going to work here now." "I am," Belinda said, kneeling down. "How are you, sweetheart?" "Good." Daddy made the lights in his office softer. "And there's a quiet room now where I can go if I need a break." Belinda looked at Julius, who shrugged. "You inspired some changes," he said. Over the next 6 months, Belinda transformed King Industries. She created sensory-friendly spaces in every office. She developed training programs teaching employees how to recognize and support neurodivergent colleagues. She started a mentorship program pairing autistic young adults with career professionals. And she did it all while learning on the job, asking questions, making mistakes, and refusing to give up. Julius supported her every step of the way. But more than that, he listened to her. When she suggested flexible work schedules for employees with sensory processing challenges, he implemented it company-wide. When she proposed quiet hours in the break rooms, he funded renovations in all 4 offices. When she wanted to hire neurodivergent consultants to review their programs, he approved the budget without hesitation. Slowly, King Industries became known as one of the most inclusive tech companies in the country. Articles were written, awards were given. But the moment that mattered most to Belinda came 6 months after she started. Belinda was in her office reviewing training materials when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Is this Belinda Harris?" A woman's voice, hesitant. "Yes, this is she. My name is Claire Patterson. I'm calling because I saw what you're doing at King Industries. The inclusion programs, the neurodiversity initiatives." Belinda frowned. The name sounded familiar. "I'm sorry. Do we know each other?" A long pause. "My husband is Richard Patterson. He was the manager at Sinclair and Monroe, the one who fired you." Belinda's breath caught. "Oh, he lost his job 3 months ago," Claire continued, her voice shaking. "Corporate found out what happened that day, how he treated you, how he handled the situation with Mr. King's daughter. They said it was a liability. They let him go." Belinda closed her eyes. She'd heard rumors but hadn't known for sure. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Don't be," Claire said. "He was wrong. What he did to you was wrong, but that's not why I'm calling." Another pause. "Our son was just diagnosed with autism. He's 5. And Richard, he's struggling. He doesn't understand. He's frustrated and angry, and he keeps saying things like, he just needs discipline or he'll grow out of it. And I'm scared he's going to hurt our son the way he—" Her voice broke. "The way he hurt that little girl, by not seeing him, by treating his needs like defiance." Belinda's throat was tight. "I saw the resources on King Industries' website," Claire continued. "The parent support groups, the training programs, and I know I have no right to ask this. I know what Richard did to you. But, is there any way? Could he maybe attend one of your sessions? Not as an employee, just as a parent who desperately needs to learn how to see his son differently?" Belinda sat there, phone pressed to her ear, thinking about all the ways she could say no. Richard Patterson had humiliated her, fired her, nearly destroyed her life. She had every right to refuse. But then she thought about a 5-year-old boy who needed a father who understood him, who needed someone to teach that father how to love him the way he deserved. And she thought about Amira, about Danny, about every autistic child whose parents didn't know how to see them yet. "Yes," Belinda said. "Really?" Claire's voice broke with relief. "Really. But not just one session. I want him to commit to the full 8-week parent training program, and I want him to do the work, to really listen, to really try." "He will," Claire promised. "I'll make sure he does." 3 weeks later, Richard Patterson walked into Belinda's first parent training session. He looked smaller than she remembered, tired, humbled. When he saw her, he stopped. "I don't deserve this," he said quietly. "No," Belinda agreed. "You don't, but your son does, and that's who this is for." Over the next 8 weeks, Belinda watched Richard transform. He learned about sensory processing, about stimming, about communication differences, about how autistic children aren't broken, they're just experiencing the world differently. He cried during week 4 when he realized how much pain he'd caused his son by demanding eye contact and punishing behaviors that were actually self-regulation. By week 8, he was advocating for accommodations at his son's school. On the last day of class, he approached Belinda. "I owe you an apology," he said, "for how I treated you, for not seeing what you saw, for valuing policy over people." Belinda looked at this man who'd once fired her, who'd once called her a liability, who'd once thought compassion was overstepping. "I forgive you," she said, "not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger won't help anyone, especially not the kids who need us to do better." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," he whispered. 6 months later, Richard Patterson started his own nonprofit, Fathers for Neurodiversity, helping dads of autistic children learn what he'd learned. He credited Belinda in every interview. She never asked for credit. She just kept doing the work. Because that's what kindness looks like. Not revenge, not punishment, not making people pay for their mistakes, but giving them a chance to learn, to grow, to become better. Julius found her in her office one evening, looking at the photos on her wall. Pictures of Danny, of Amira, of the families who'd gone through her programs. "You could have destroyed him," Julius said quietly. "Patterson. He deserved it." "Maybe," Belinda said, "but his son didn't deserve to lose the chance of having a father who understood him." Julius smiled. "That's why this works," he said. "Not just the programs or the policies, but you. The way you see people, even the ones who've hurt you, as capable of change." Belinda shrugged. "My brother taught me that." Danny can't speak. "But he's the kindest person I know. He doesn't hold grudges. He doesn't punish people for not understanding him. He just keeps showing up with love every single day." She looked at Julius. "If Danny can do that, so can I." Here's what Belinda's story teaches us. Kindness isn't weakness. Forgiveness isn't letting people off the hook. Grace isn't pretending hurt didn't happen. It's choosing to believe that people can change. That hurt people can become healing people. That the person who wronged you might become the person who helps someone else because you showed them a better way. Belinda could have refused to help Richard Patterson. No one would have blamed her. He fired her, humiliated her, nearly destroyed her livelihood. But she didn't help him for his sake. She helped him for his son's sake. For every child who needed a parent willing to learn. And that choice, that one act of grace, created a ripple effect that changed hundreds of lives. Maybe you're holding on to anger at someone who hurt you. Maybe you have every right to. Maybe they deserve your rage. But what if choosing kindness doesn't mean they win? What if it means everyone wins, you, them, and all the people their transformation might help? Subscribe if you believe that the bravest thing you can do isn't revenge, it's grace. Because sometimes the people who hurt us are just waiting for someone to show them a better way. This is the story of Belinda Harris, a woman who lost a job for doing the right thing, who was offered a second chance by someone who saw her worth, and who chose to extend that same grace to the man who'd tried to take everything from her, not because he deserved it, but because his son did, and because kindness, real, radical, transformative kindness, is always worth choosing. Even when it costs you, especially when it costs you, because that's when it matters most. The end.